Having completed serving his country for the second time in the Marine Air Corps, Ted Williams once again prepares to return to play baseball.
If I was going to do a baseball movie, it should somehow deal with the mythology of the sport.
Robert Redford based his version of Roy Hobbs almost entirely on his idol, Ted Williams. From his number...
About 9.
9? Oh, you got me. 9 it is.
To his beautiful lefty swing, to his animosity toward the press,
Don't ever look back, Max! Ever!
to his egotistical baseball ambitions.
When I walk down the street, people look at me and say, there goes Roy Hobbs, the best there ever was.
And just like Williams, Hobbs suffers a lengthy absence from the game. In Roy's case, it's due to a deranged fan. And in Ted's, a world war. In fact, it was the second great war of Ted's life. 2 world wars occurring within single human lifetimes in the early 20th century impacted contemporary people profoundly. In our case, Joseph Campbell and Bernard Malamud, who we'll return to later. Considering the millions of Americans who got displaced during the 2 wars, then returned home years later, I believe there was something in the air, so to speak, that facilitated a renewed interest in the hero's journey and mythologizing. Think about it. Countless people are literally called, not quite to an adventure, but for some of them it was, to face trials and tribulations, with, at least for most, an eventual homecoming. That's of course the nature of war, going back to ancient times.
Have you ever read Homer?
The Homeric epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, deal with this issue, as Odysseus returns home after a decade at war from across the sea, only to have his journey diverted and upset numerous times along the way. The Odyssey is the quintessential hero's journey, the monomyth, the archetype of so many stories even to the present day. It's been called, for good reason, the most influential story in all literature. Mythology is not some dusty, archaic form of storytelling, but a very relevant part of our modern culture. All of these mega franchises borrow heavily from ancient mythology, including the hero's journey. The one who popularized all these similarities in human myth-making was Joseph Campbell, he who so influenced George Lucas with his book The Hero with a Thousand Faces. But he was adamant that myths must change and evolve with society, that they become living myth, as it were, and not static. He called mythology an antidote for cynicism, depression, and despair, and that it was not just optional, but the responsibility of artists to update mythology for each generation.
It must be kept alive. The only people that can keep it alive are artists of one kind or another. That the artist is, his function is the mythologization of the environment and the world.
If films are our modern myths, then filmmakers are our modern Homers, if you will. But who would be the new heroes, the new Odysseus or Lancelot? People were far less willing to glorify soldiers, warriors, and generals, so who would fill the hero vacuum? What about other people who were glorified in ancient times? People who could do something better than the vast majority, the best physical specimens of their time, superstar athletes. In the late 19th century, with more money and more time, people actually began paying to watch sports.
You want to see some more? Yeah! Let's come Chicago, bad ticket!
What's more exciting than seeing another stage play? How about a totally unscripted drama? The heroes and villains, the successes and failures, the roller coaster ride of emotions.
You believe in miracles? Yes!
Where David will sometimes beat Goliath.
I mean, some of the things that happen in baseball or football, you go, well, that's impossible, and it did, you know, and that's part of what makes sports so fascinating.
The makings of a great story happen just naturally.
It's 4th and inches, and the Giants are going for it. You've got to love sports.
And because athletes' careers are short compared to other professions, their rise and fall nature becomes easier to see.
This is how a lot of American boys learn about mortality by watching a sports figure. You see him come up as a baby, as a rookie, becoming a young man in the game, and then aging, having to work at what came naturally, and then physically failing and not being as good and fading away and retiring all in the space of 20 years.
Meaning they organically embody the ideas that Campbell espoused, namely,
The problem of the transition from childhood to maturity, and then from maturity and full capacity to losing those powers and acquiescing in the natural course of, you might say, the autumn time of life and the passage away. Myths are there to help us go with it.
which we'll soon see pertains perfectly to the natural. But first I should explain why baseball lends itself so well to mythologizing.
And he would have had it in mind to write about baseball had he seen you out there today.
Nothing captured the American spirit of individual achievement helping the collective more than baseball.
I'm going out there for myself. But I get nowhere unless the team wins.
Team.
From the 19th into the 20th century, it became the national pastime. It appealed so much to Americans for a few reasons. It was not a British sport like soccer or cricket, when Americans were trying to separate themselves from their old overlords.
I must kill the queen.
In the land of individualism, America has been described as the West on steroids. It featured within a greater team framework a battle between two individuals, echoing an idea from time immemorial. As many rural workers moved to cities for industrial jobs, the lure of the green space, the pastoral homestead, the farm, became nostalgic. Farming is a major piece of the baseball nostalgia puzzle.
The day I was born, I should have been a farmer.
Did you sell the farm?
No, I'll always have that.
Good. It's home.
I'm 36 years old, and I'm about to become a farmer.
The batting lineup was and still is democratic, an American ideal. For the best and worst hitter will get just about the same number of chances per game. It's at first simple to understand, almost primitive, just a guy trying to throw a rock past a guy trying to hit it with a stick. It's a summer game when the weather's beautiful, kids are out of school, and that literally passes the time during the long, hot summer days. It's been called the soundtrack of America. And perhaps baseball's greatest strength, its history, not just in years, which stretches to the 1860s, and which it reveres more than any other sport, but in the sheer number of games, about 250,000 to this point, with 162 more per team every season. The next closest sports have only half as many. What I'm conveying is the immense number of dramas, comedies, tragedies that have been made and remade, with so many chances every year for unprecedented stuff to happen. It's been called one of the two indigenous American art forms, the other of course being movies. These two forms put together can create potent mythologies.
And they'll watch the game, and it'll be as if they'd dipped themselves in magic waters.
Because baseball stands above the other sports for its greater cinematic qualities. For starters, we get good long looks at the players, i.e. characters' faces, which titans of cinema have confirmed as the paramount parts of a movie. And no sport offers this better. Baseball movies, and even your average mid-season telecast, include so many shots of the hitters' and pitchers' faces that, paired with the volume of games and the longest player careers, foster feelings of personal connection. And the close-ups exist because the players are largely still during their battle. In soccer and basketball, the players are almost always moving. The nice dramatic close-ups occur during the times when they slow down, and most mirror baseball, penalty kicks in soccer and free throws in basketball. Most team sports feature constantly changing protagonists too. You just don't know who's going to get the ball next in football, soccer, etc. In fact, that's the whole point, to surprise the defense. In baseball, for better or worse, you know what's coming. We know the protagonist for the next series of pitches will be the same. There's a definitive beginning and end to that tiny little arc of a story, the at-bat. Baseball adheres to a strict batting order, so while a coach can have Pat Mahomes or Steph Curry touch the ball 30 plus times, Aaron Judge will only get about 4 opportunities to help his team. This infuses a sense of fate almost, as the manager can't force it. It has to happen on its own.
And the Yankees have done it again!
Because of this, the best teams lose more often and the worst teams win more often than in any other major sport.
And the Padres have slayed the dragon!
I.e., the underdog, a crucial part of the American mythos, always has a chance.
Safe.
And if I can add a little subjectivity here, I tend to prefer sports that allow a losing team on one play to take the lead, unlike hockey and soccer, for example, where every score is worth the same. It's just more dramatic.
She is gone!
Bear in mind, I'm not saying baseball is superior to any of these other sports, just that it lends itself better to mythologizing.
There's a long flag! I can't be, I believe! The Giants won the pennant!
Perhaps most strangely, there's also a timelessness to baseball, literally, as it's the only American team sport without a clock. An at-bat can last 10 seconds.
First pitch, fastball, hunting.
Or 10 minutes.
So far, a 10-minute at-bat.
Furthermore, there's a timelessness to its history.
You could take someone from at the turn of the 20th century, plop them down on a major league ballpark today, and they say, yeah, I got it.
Unlike football and basketball, which have changed so much since their early days, you can depict century-old baseball and have the audience immediately follow along. The natural itself has a timelessness.
There's a timelessness to the natural,
as period archetypal narratives tend to have, and there's certainly a timelessness to mythology in general. This sort of eternal mythical aspect of baseball attracted young Bernard Malamud, who once said the game's history has the quality of mythology. As the child of immigrants, he especially wanted to assimilate into his new society.
He did not want to be a Russian Jewish kid. He wanted to be an American kid. He loved baseball. He loved the Americanness of it.
After all, whoever wants to know the heart and mind of America had better learn baseball. In fact, he never felt truly American until the film version of his book came out when he was 70 years old.
When he left the theater that night, he turned to her and he said, now I'm an American writer.
This trifecta of baseball, America, and movies fosters modern versions of ancient myths, including heroes' journeys, which remain timeless, eternal in their circularity. This is where baseball connects with us on a subliminal level. Follow me here. The season kicks off in
spring, rejuvenation, rebirth, everything's blooming.
Ends in the fall, the time of harvesting, reaping the benefits of the spring sowing, and then hunkering down for the winter. The circular nature of the batting lineup, the pitching rotation, even the base running. How does a batter score? By
leaving home, going on your adventure, hunting, or whatever it may be, and coming back to home.
Yes, it's like the perfect hero's journey. Maybe that's why it's become such an integral part of the American psyche. If baseball is the hero's journey and baseball is America, then isn't America the hero's journey? The Natural's director, Barry Levinson, also grew up in a Russian Jewish family, and not coincidentally, I think, became interested in the mythology of the game.
He has a deep sense of Americana.
Even Robert Redford stipulated,
if I was going to do a baseball movie, it should somehow deal with the mythology of the sport.
Which is what attracted him to Malamud's book as a perfect fusion of this, for it combines several real baseball events with classic baseball fiction.
But there is no joy in Mudville. Mighty Casey has struck out.
And an air of Arthurian and Greek mythology.
And he would have had it in mind to write about baseball had he seen you out there today.
While Campbell said the underlying messages remain, the inflection of myths, as he called it, must evolve. So Redford and Levinson adapted Malamud's tragic myth to their contemporary audience. By the early 80s, there was a definite shift towards optimism in Hollywood, and the book's downer ending would not fly for a $28 million movie. So the ending became a happy one, and what's more American than that? Movie Roy learns from his mistakes.
Now I believe we have two lives. The life we learn with, and the life we live with after that.
While Book Roy does not, because the film presents a karmic structure where the good are rewarded and the bad are punished. Roger Ebert said, in the natural, baseball is purely and simply a matter of divine intervention. Like Homer's sagas, this is a world affected by the gods. There is no chance, things happen for a reason. Roy is punished by an agent of the underworld for his lust and hubris.
Will you be the best there ever was in the game?
That's right.
He goes into a slump because he starts seeing Memo, and breaks out of the slump because Iris reappears.
That was just luck.
I know better.
Because it's
loaded with every mythological character you could think about, every mythological plot.
I'll have to run through them fairly quickly. The story starts just like the Homeric epics in medias res, which was a pretty new concept at the time, then jumps back to fill in the gaps. Roy is like Campbell's ideal hero with 1,000 faces, as he shares traits with the mythic knights Lancelot and Percival, but also Odysseus with a splash of Jesus. He gets a call to adventure.
The Cubs have sent for me.
And seeks the Holy Grail, in this case the National League pennant. He avoids evil, gains a following, suffers a bloody wound, and eventually returns home to his first love and their son. Those evils include Harriet Bird as a siren luring Roy not with song but with honeyed words.
And he would have had it in mind to write about baseball had he seen you out there today.
Memo is Calypso, the witch who traps Odysseus and forces him into being her sex slave. The judge who sits in darkness is Hades or Satan, trying to corrupt men by preying on their vices.
Good night, Mr. Hunt.
Gus the Gambler is the Cyclops, who underestimates Odysseus' cleverness.
I think you overlooked these guys.
In fact, his advice for Roy
You got a great gift of talent, but it's not enough.
matches what his father said.
You got a gift, Roy, but it's not enough.
And they're both frankly correct, but Gus is doing it for evil ends while his father for virtuous ones. It's a great example of an identical phrase being used as bookends by opposing characters for opposing goals. It seems to jog Roy's memory, who uses it as even more motivation to bring this evil triumvirate's rule to an end. In the monomyth, though, the hero has his helpers too. Roy's deceased dad is Zeus, blessing him with lightning at pivotal moments. And Roy would not be the first ball player to name his bat. These superstitions that athletes still employ evoke ancient ideas of animism and the Greek pantheon, predating any monotheistic religions. Iris is the Greek goddess of the rainbow, which was a link between gods and humans, using it to carry messages between the worlds. She also parallels the Odyssey's Penelope, the chaste feminine inspiration that draws her husband home. The hero often resists a temptress and reconciles with a father figure
Shoot up.
before transcending. Pop Fisher is of course the Fisher King, who rules over a wasteland until he is healed by Sir Percival and the drought is ended, with a nice side of prophecy that Percival's sword will break at a crucial moment.
Go pick me out a winner, Bobby.
The transition from childhood to maturity, and then from maturity and full capacity to losing those powers and acquiescing in the natural course of, you might say, the autumn time of life and the passage away. Myths are there to help us go with it, accept nature's way.
We only see these two stages of Roy, as a teenager trying to adjust to being a pro ball player, and then again 16 years later for the tougher transition, when he must adapt to the end of his baseball life.
It could prove fatal if you continue to play baseball.
But it takes three younger figures in the climactic sequence, the young fireballer, Roy's son, and the bat boy, to send him to the next stage of his life, as Campbell hoped, with serenity.
Serenity now!
Are you supposed to yell it?
And then on the tape wasn't specific.
Because while Roy is the current hero, the hero's journey is a circle and will go on forever with new generations. By using so much mythic symbology, the film puts us into a similar mindset as the listeners to ancient bards must have been in. Levinson sees the movie as
the telling of a story many times over. So it just keeps getting expanded upon. That's the fun of the tall tale stretched out.
just as the Homeric epics evolved generation after generation. It wasn't about the seeing or reading of these events, but the communal hearing of them that so transfixed ancient people. And the natural makes a direct link between the audio aspect of myth and pre-television baseball. In a beautiful twist of fate, Levinson became the New York Knights announcer.
It only happened because I didn't have time to get an announcer, and so the only way to do it is for me to go into a booth and literally just talk.
This focus on hearing the game is emphasized.
Hey, Al, you read Mercer's article? Why should I read it? I heard it.
And we're reminded that radio was the principal way fans followed the game for decades before TV.
There were radios all the time. You could walk down the street and not miss a pitch.
Meaning they had to imagine what they heard, just like the audiences of classic oral tales. And where does mythology live? But in our imagination. The lion's share of the natural takes place in 1939, which I don't think is coincidence. It's the year baseball debuted on TV, which eventually overtook radio as the primary way of consuming sports, thereby changing the way we think of athletes. Radio can elevate our heroes, while TV, for better or worse, grounds them. Levinson is romanticizing this era of forced imagination, when we could connect with our ancient ancestors who similarly imagined their heroes and gods and villains. So in this gorgeous stroke of serendipity, he becomes the Knights' diegetic Homer, relating Roy's epic feats to the increasing legion of fans.
Here comes the pitch. He swings. Long fly way back.
And simultaneously as the movie's director becomes our Homer, albeit a far more visual one, relating a myth of heroes and gods and villains to us, the audience. The Natural sparked a renaissance of baseball movies that I think was the peak decade for them, including gems like these. But it was ultimately cut short by the infamous cancellation of the '94 World Series.
No World Series, no more baseball this year.
Baseball now suffers a tarnished image as it tries to move on from the steroid scandal, 3-hour games, recent cheating controversies, and the rise of 3 true outcome play. The latest lockout and the constant anxiety surrounding CBA negotiations have also contributed to knocking it off its pedestal as the national pastime, as well as fostering a far more cynical view of the sport. What would The Natural look like if it was remade today? They'd probably keep the novel's tragic ending. But perhaps that's why we need baseball mythology now more than ever. To bring us full circle, Redford's character was inspired, if you recall, by Ted Williams. Like him, Roy Hobbs has been called a godlike figure who also homered in his last career at bat. Legendary ends to legendary careers in a legend-making game.
And the crowd simply will not stop applauding here at Fenway Park in Boston.
3-0. Got to come in there with it now. Here's the pitch. Ball 4 wide. Selkirk walks on 4 straight pitches. That's the second time, and Gordon is getting a tremendous hand as he steps up to the plate. The boy that pulled that sensational play, and Art just said a moment ago, you called that play wrong. He says it can't be done. An impossibility, it looked like, to start with, but nevertheless, he came up with it, so that's what counts. Gordon batting, that's right-handed. Here's the pitch. Strike 1 called on Flash Gordon.